Yeah, so again, welcome everybody and thank you for joining. So this is the second to last week of the Database Tycoon summer camp. And so I thought that it might be nice to recap some of these concepts and tools and pieces of the data stack that we've been learning about throughout this whole series and try to put them together and see, we all know what the modern data stack is, I think, by this point, but it's 2025 and I want to see how can we make this an even more modern data stack. So I'm going to walk through a sample stack that I'm building now, and it's a real stack for Database Tycoon, but again, don't let me get ahead of myself. I'll move on to the next slide. So you'll see the agenda here. Basically, I'm just going to kind of walk you through the project at a high level. Then I'll walk you through the stack, so some details about the individual tools and the ways that I'm choosing to implement them. Then I'll give you a quick demo on what I have built, and then we'll have time at the end for Q&A. Yeah, that's about it. So before I get into it, I'll talk a little bit about who I am. So I'm Stephen Sciortino. I'm the one who's kind of been hanging out in the background of these calls up until this session, but I am a data engineer and the founder of Database Tycoon. So I've been really thrilled to see this series grow and just be able to make it happen as Database Tycoon. I've been working in data for over 10 years at this point. Which, just to freak everybody out, that means 2015 now. That's what 10 years means, by the way. Yeah. So I'm specialized in open source tooling and Snowflake data warehouses. I've worked in consulting, in addition to just working in data, I've worked in consulting for a number of years. And in that time, I've had a chance to see a whole bunch of different types of stacks and tools and, things that have come and gone. So, trying to take everything I've learned from all those experiences and bring it in here. So I'll move right along into a little description of the project. So the project we're going to talk about today is called Project Dog Food. And if you've been working in software for a while, you probably know this term dog food kind of just refers to the general practice of, I don't really know why they use this word, but sort of using your own internal skills, like you're eating your own dog food, so to speak, kind of thinking like, how can we use the tools that we sell internally? And so for Database Tycoon, that means building data stacks. So this is actually going to become our de facto internal data stack. So for context about me, I started this business about a year ago, and in that time, I've gotten a chance to sit on the other side of the table and be the stakeholder, so to speak. So now I'm starting to get a sense of these KPIs and metrics I need to track, things like revenue and spend, hours worked by the members of my team, and which project they're working those hours towards, how much time each member of the team has available. The bigger the team gets, the harder it is to balance and juggle those amounts. So it seems like a natural fit to build some internal tooling to actually deliver that info. So, by dog fooding this project, I can use my team's experience to build this entirely in-house. It's really solving two problems at once. First and foremost, it's creating the analytics stack that I need to operate my business. But frankly, it's giving me and the team a good chance to get experience with some tools, especially tools that may feel like they are not, being adopted by the enterprise as quickly sometimes. It's nice when you don't have to, ask permission, so to speak, to set up a tool. I've been able to just build basically whatever I want with this, with my team's input, and we've landed on a pretty nice stack that we feel good about. So it's nice to have that opportunity. With that said, I want to talk a little bit more about the stack itself and the tools that we settled on for this. So forgive me for going a little crazy with the animations, but I haven't made a slide deck in a while. So let's talk about, oh great, this is of course not going to work in the right order. Let's talk about the components of the stack. And I'm going to start with the two, what I consider the two most fundamental parts. Any good data stack needs to start with a warehouse. It's really the first thing that's going to come up when you talk about storing data or moving data in any way. And for this project, we're going with DuckDB. Again, I mentioned this is a good chance for us to experiment with newer tools, and DuckDB, gets quite a lot of attention as it deserves. As you'll see later on in the demo, it's pretty easy to work with. And then we have DLT and DLT Hub here on the ingestion side. Again, this is a really convenient package to work with, and it's been really nice to just start using this tool. Feel like it's just easy to get started. And well, again, I'll get into it more in the demo later, but I'm starting with this as the foundational stack. Data ingestion with DLT warehouse is DuckDB. And then lastly, for the modeling side, I'll be using SQLMesh. So again, kind of not going for the reflex, so to speak, of DBT here, but trying to see, okay, can SQLMesh fit in a stack like with these other modern tools, and can it just handle all the basic expectations that I would have of a data stack? One last little surprise here is that to the extent that I can, I want to try to use these companies' cloud products as well, partly for testing purposes and partly for maybe potentially hosting this. I mean, I'll get into this more later, but there are some really nice advantages to using MotherDuck and the hosted instance of DuckDB, because for anyone on the call who has used DuckDB before, it's sort of an ephemeral database. It only lives in memory. It's like SQLite. And so hosting it and running a real warehouse on DuckDB is basically a non-starter unless you have something like MotherDuck that's going to host it for you and act as the running server and all that for the connections. So that's just a bit about the stack. I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these. So let me start with MotherDuck/DuckDB. This is the home page. It's so at its core, it's a cloud-hosted DuckDB warehouse offering. Everything I'm going to show you in this demo is on their free tier. So I didn't put a credit card down at this level. I mean, this is all self-service. I didn't have to reach out to their partner team or anything. You just go on the page, you set up your free account, and you get going. And then for something a little more on the BE side, they can support multiple databases, which is a common arrangement in other warehouses like Snowflake or Databricks or BigQuery. So like, I don't have it shown in this snapshot necessarily, but this is the database that's going to end up housing all the DLT source data. And below this, there are other databases that, you don't just have one instance necessarily of DuckDB. It can support all of them, and you can query across them and things like that. Just want to take a minute also to talk about how kind of clean this UI is. MotherDuck is not something I would call a data cloud in the sense that like Snowflake is trying to brand itself that way. It doesn't do, at this stage, it doesn't do a lot more than warehousing, which is fine. I mean, that's really what it's meant to do. It's meant to be a cloud-hosted warehouse for DuckDB, and it does that exceptionally well. You get your database access, you get notebooks, which I'll explore a bit, and you just kind of get thrown into this like notebook view by default. So it's super easy to just jump in and start writing queries. I have never felt the need to connect this to an external IDE yet. It's just so easy to run stuff directly. It's nice. It's very well oriented to the user. Moving on, we have DLT Hub, which, as I mentioned earlier, is the tool we're using for ingestion. I think to be a little more accurate about it, I would say that I'm not really running DLT, I'm running a Python script that runs in GitHub Actions that's importing the DLT library, but that's a lot of semantics to basically say, you know, this is free to run as well. It's I'm not going to show the script here. I'll spare you the code on the slide, but what's happening in here is the pre-configured DLT code that I've added to this project. It knows where it's supposed to go reach out to for this, in this case, a Stripe data set. And so it just runs this on schedule. A good way to think about this is anywhere you can run Python, you can run DLT. So I use GitHub Actions instinctively because it's a pretty reliable tool for orchestration. And it, you know, works great for situations like this that are demos or, you know, in a pinch, or maybe even some production environments if it's you know, built up robustly. But that's what I'm doing for DLT for the orchestration. I'm just going to run it here in GitHub Actions. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but at some point I would like to try DLT Plus. I think that's a new tool that the DLT Hub team is working on. Would love to give that a try at some point and try to add that to the stack. Moving along, we have SQLMesh. This is one where you can interact with SQLMesh a few different ways. In this demo, I'm using my locally installed CLI to use SQLMesh, but what you get with that CLI actually is this local user interface as well. So I'm serving this UI from my local terminal. And you know, there's some good things I'll talk about here in a second as well. But similar to DLT, I'm interested in using Tobico Cloud. I'm getting started with it now, and I'm trying to kind of figure out all the prod best practices for the tool. But for this demo and for the time being, it's been much easier, I'd say, to work with Mother Duck in the cloud using this locally installed SQLMesh. So keep that in mind. That's not part of the production run at this point. All right. Next up, I have the demo. Maybe I'll just pause here for a quick second and just see if anybody wants to jump in with any questions or if there's anything I've missed in the chat.
So Oscar had a question. He said, your stack is composed of modular open source components designed to operate in concert. That's how you choose and assemble. So what do you think of the current trend towards unified data platforms, exemplified with Databricks, AWS SageMaker, Unified Studio, Microsoft Fabric, and others? Snowflake, Dremio, serve up a range of connected services. Are we returning to the bad old days of IBM, Oracle, SAP monoliths?
It's a great question. And I'll probably get into it more after the demo, just because I could spend a lot of time on this. But generally, I think that I'm not against the monolith idea. Like I've spent a lot of time in the Snowflake environment, not so much in Databricks, but a lot of time in Snowflake. And I think, you know, if you are all in on Snowflake and you want to make that choice, it's a good place to be because it's expensive, but it can pretty much do anything you want at this point. Tools like Microsoft and Fabric, I just don't think, from what I've heard, I don't think they've reached the level yet where you can actually really seamlessly accomplish the stuff. So I think for me, it all boils down to the trade-off of using the individual tools. It's partly why I went through this exercise today. Like, in my opinion, if you can construct something from a composite of other tools, and you can kind of get through all the challenges that come along with that, then it's worth it. And it can be much cheaper and much more configurable. And that's one thing that I think that regardless of what tools get used for the modern data stack, I think that's one idea that it really kind of got right from the beginning, sort of emphasizing that the stack is a composite of tools, and we should kind of continue thinking about that. But anyway, I'm happy to kind of chat more about that later on as we go through. So let me jump into the demo then. So let me actually pause this. So one thing I want to say is that I did not this will not be a live demo. I recorded these videos in advance, but I did not test pausing the video. So we're just going to jump into it. So this is the Mother Duck UI. These are like the notebooks you get when you view it. You can see in here, they've already populated in some sample data and some sample queries. So I made some of this stuff, I'll explain later, but you can jump in here and start exploring right away. So even on the free tier, you can kind of start exploring some sample data. Actually, maybe I did add some of this, but in any case, this shows you the exploration capabilities of the tool. It's very easy to just kind of like click around. You see the columns, you see the column types, things that I would consider perhaps like table stakes at this point for a good warehouse UI. But you know, Mother Duck does it well. And here I'm showing how to actually add database. Do that right here in the UI. Database gets dropped in and added there. So, oh, and I wanted to emphasize that this will be used throughout the rest of the demo, this dog food demo database. So that was just a quick like run through of some of the features it has, but as you can see, it's simple, but it has the features it needs. Next, I'm going to show you some SQLMesh stuff. Sorry for the small font, but just want to show you a few elements of the model. So that's the name of the model. This is the type of the model. You can define that here with this kind field. In this case, this is how you define an incremental model in SQLMesh. You give it a time column, which it's going to use as the determining field of whether or not the row is considered new or not. Then also something that's kind of nice about SQLMesh is that you can just configure the code definitions right here in SQL. Maybe you can do this with the other tools as well. I haven't tried, but it's kind of nice to just have it all in one file, not have this separate YAML. And then down here you have the expected SQL definition for the model. As I mentioned, this is a real stack that I'm building with my team. So, you know, we are loading in data from Mercury, which is something I've been using for financial transactions. And so right now you can see I'm highlighted on this DLT load field. Not only are we going to pull in the real data from the source, but there's also some metadata from DLT that I figured, you know, let's track that in the model as well. So we'll have things like the load time, and I think there's a couple of other fields in here that, you know, you just sometimes it's useful to have it when you're looking at the model. But yeah, before I move on, this is that locally served SQLMesh UI. Again, it's kind of bare bones in a good way. It just kind of shows you what you need. There will be more things I show in here in a moment. But one other thing that's kind of cool though is that at the bottom you'll see this in all the screenshots, but they give you good lineage down here. Any model you're on, you'll get the lineage for that model, and then I can't click on this now, but you can actually click in and get column level lineage, which sometimes you just got to have that column level lineage to understand what the, you know, what the real problem is sometimes. So anyway, let's move on. Next, I'm going to show environments. So here in this, so I ran environments, ignore that warning for now, but you can see that there's one environment and it lists it here. It's a prod environment, no expiration. So if I want to make a new environment, you simply do that by running this plan command and you provide the name. When it sees the new name, it'll know it has to create a new environment. The error that it's giving me down here, it's kind of a prescient error here, saying that you shouldn't really make a new environment. If I could pause that. There, let me start over. Basically, it's saying you shouldn't make a new environment that's exactly the same as your current environment, because the whole point is that SQLMesh under the hood can really manage the environments well, so you don't have to copy data multiple times. Probably can't really explain it fully here, but the idea being that they're all kind of virtual copies of each other, just tracked in memory by SQLMesh. So they're just suggesting either make a change to one of your files so it's different, or just force it. So there's a parameter you can send, include unmodified, and it'll just force the environment to get created. So that's what I'm doing here. And then there's a sort of a two-step process with SQLMesh: the plan and the apply. For people who have used infrastructure as code tools like Terraform, this tool was modeled after that style, where everything is basically configured in code and deployed out onto your warehouse by this tool. So when you run plan, it tells you what it's going to do. In my case, it's doing nothing because there's no diff. There's no diff between the prod and this environment. But it would tell me, like, okay, we're going to create this table. We're going to update this, column type or whatever. And then it asks you to confirm that. And so that's what this step is here, the apply virtual update, yes, no. So if you say yes, it created, since it's still a new environment, it created everything brand new, like a lot of the views and stuff. So 14 out of 14 are created. SQLMesh knows that it's no different from the prod environment, but it still, went through the motions and it created it. So next up, I'm going to show you how this looks in Mother Duck. So pulled up the UI again, came in here, and there you go. Now you can actually see these auto-created schemas. It generated these automatically based on the name that I provided to the environment. So it appended that Stephen Dev on the end. That's like not with any macros added or anything. That's just out of the box functionality with the Tobico environments. So the environments are a whole, there's a lot more I could explore there, but that's just one really like quick and easy feature that's like, okay, if you just want to, make a change to a file, test it, and do it in the most lightweight way possible, where you're not like rebuilding entire marts, or you're not rebuilding a whole environment just for your own testing. SQLMesh makes it super, super easy to just make an environment on the fly and do what you need to do. So now I'm back in the CLI, and I just wanted to show that the environment is still there. Now there's two environments listed. I'm going to show you actually how to get rid of this environment. So first I want to just call out, SQLMesh kind of does have a lot of commands at the moment. So sometimes it's helpful to just run the help. And I'm highlighting two commands here, invalidate and janitor. This is something I feel like I've not seen much covered in demos and write-ups and stuff. So I wanted to call it out here, but you can invalidate, or rather, if you do this process where you start by invalidating the environment, and then I almost figured out how to pause it. Oh, here we go. Okay, great. So you can invalidate the environment, and it says, okay, it's invalidated. Then if you run SQLMesh janitor, or a trusty janitor, it cleans it up. I mean, just cleans it up for you. It knows what schemas and tables are in that environment, and it will drop them. So what does that look like in Mother Duck? This is pre me refreshing the page. That's what was there before. I do a refresh, and they're gone. They've all been dropped. These SQLMesh schemas that I'm kind of circling right now, that's where the physical layer lives. When I said earlier that SQLMesh will make virtual environments in the attempt to avoid rewriting data, they kind of start by just writing it in one spot, and that serves as the prod, I guess, or just, it has to exist somewhere, and then the views get built on top of that. That's why you're seeing these in here. But yeah, that's how easy it is to just create and then drop an environment. So, okay, off. I'm gonna pause it again. Off screen, I want to move on to a different part of the demo where I'm going to show a different feature. Before this was recorded, I cleaned up the environment. I made a new environment off screen called demo environment. So you can see that there. I'm going to pull up a model here. So I also use Toggle to track hours at my business. So this is a model to intake those raw time entries. You'll start to see some similar metadata fields like you've seen on the other SQLMesh files. And then the definition down here. So I called out this one row, hours worked, which, well, it tells you, it takes the seconds worked and converts it into a more readable format of hours worked. So just for the sake of making any change, I added minutes worked instead, and just changed the factor so it would divide into minutes instead of hours. Okay, so that changes to 60, and right, so actually I left this in on purpose, and things kind of went a little bit off the rails here, but I was like, back at this spot, I figured, okay, you should add the minutes worked to the definition, but I decided to try not adding it and to see what would happen. And then this happened. I tried to plan on the environment, and it said the test completed, the virtual update was completed and everything. And so I have to admit that I wasn't sure after running this if it had actually gotten created or not. But I'm leaving this all in the demo because I want to try to make this focused around, these real workflows that people run into. I think we can all relate to a tool where we've, watched the demo and everything goes great. Everything goes great in the demo, and then you try to use it and you just get some kind of like weird situation, not even necessarily an error, just like an edge case that you can't get your way out of. So I pivoted at this point. So I switched back to the CLI, because everything you can do in the UI, you can do in here. And so something between the UI and the CLI was not in sync, because here it actually said that my environment count is 1 and the hours worked is the only field. So I actually re-added it. So now I kind of switched and pivoted to a CLI IDE based workflow. Made the same change. And then I, did the right thing and I put in documentation for it. Thank you, Cursor, for just autofilling that for me. And then next up, I'll be running all the commands to actually materialize this. So this is more like what I expected to see in the UI. And also this shows the lesson that I learned earlier, which is make the change first and then create the environment. And so what's happening is that it actually shows you in some very high contrast text that you are modifying that field. Oh, this is cool. It shows you the directly and indirectly modified tables. So toggle time entries is obviously modified directly because that's the one I made the change in, but time tracking, which is downstream, is also affected because if the name changes, it affects it downstream. So anyway, then I kind of moved along and I ran it. So I just kind of did the yes and then ran. Can now confirm that there's 2 environments. And yeah, that's really it for this video. I just wanted to show that. Now, okay, let's check Mother Duck to make sure that it got added. So before I added it, I ran this and I got an error that said the column minutes worked was not available in the table. and this is cool. So still got the error. And I'm like, wait, I thought I fixed it. No, it turns out, I mean, I changed the environment name. So the schema name is different. And Mother Duck has some AI built in, I guess, where it suggested that as the new name for me. So that got the query running. And then you can see I just did some really just select star limit 10. You can see a couple of things, a few entries logged, and the calculation I did was correct, I guess. 1 hour is in fact equal to 60 minutes. Always good to know that I can still do basic math. Then we have just some aggregates in here, count, sum, just to show that it's like, this easy to run a query and see what you need in SQLMesh, or rather in Mother Duck in this case. So that was the demo. I know none of that was necessarily revolutionary, but those are the types of tasks where, as a data engineer, I feel like I spend, 10 to 20% of my time just poking around and interfaces and just trying to do these simple things of create a dev environment, drop a dev environment, clean it safely, things that are just natural habits when it comes to other tools, where I wanted to show some of those workflows here. So let's talk a little bit about this stack at a high level, some of the victories, and some of the lessons that I learned through the process. So one headline that I really want to just share across is like, local SQLMesh works really well with the remote Mother Duck instance. It's just a good setup, feels like a very comfortable stack. I showed you on this call that I'm learning about the different CLI commands and how they all fit together necessarily, but there's really a nice, synergy between these two tools, I'd say. SQLMesh environments are great. I mean, these really this makes this tool stand out from others to me, because it's really kind of taking that step into the warehouse management that other tools I can think of have really not done, where, I can think of lots of times where I had to reach out to somebody in Slack on Friday and say, hey, is your, dev Steven schema that you made 6 months ago, is that still, are you using that anymore? Or can I drop that? And then I find out, like, in order to drop it, you have to go in and like cascade drop all the tables, and, it can be a whole thing. So having the tool manage that is nice. And I know that I'm just kind of scratching the surface of what these environments are capable of. Lastly, I have to give the Mother Duck team a shout out for their free tier. Everybody loves a free tier, but there's nothing worse than hitting that limit quickly and finding out, or maybe even worse than that is when you have a time-based tier where you're just cramming as much work in to like a 1 week or 2 week trial period as you possibly can. Mother Duck, I don't have the details here, but it's not a super high capacity situation. Like, I think you get 10 gigabytes for free, but for a demo project or for many projects, that's quite enough. So I would encourage you to check it out, sign up, even if you don't really have a project in mind yet. So lessons learned. Unfortunately, I just couldn't quite get Topico Cloud running the way I wanted it to for this demo. I hope to have a follow-up where I do that and get this stack actually running in production eventually. But for the time being, I just felt it was better to move ahead with the local SQLMesh environment. And as I mentioned in the last slide, that experience is really good. This is sort of a way of saying that, yes, Mother Duck can handle these basic data warehousing setups very well, but don't expect it to do much more than that at this point. It's not going to run your random Python script or, Spark job, or, it's not going to, I don't know, insert random Snowflake thing. It's not going to run a Streamlit app, but it can do warehousing, and it can do it very well. And then I want to chat about this a bit too. I think that there is a bit of a learning curve to thinking like a SQLMesh engineer. I know that DBT and maybe Tristan in particular is famous for popularizing the analytics engineer role, and that has been coupled tightly with DBT. And I think that the user of SQLMesh is a bit, I would almost describe this as a tool for data architects more so than a tool for analytics engineers, because you really do need to have the awareness of the environment you're building in a way that you kind of don't with SQLMesh, that you don't with DBT, and in general don't always need as an analytics engineer. But with SQLMesh, you're doing all the analytics engineering in the tool, plus you're managing the environments and you're sort of managing the production of it. The production of it is much more tightly coupled with the development of it. So I'll leave it at that. And maybe I'll do a blog or something about this in the future, but I think this may be why it's sometimes tricky to switch to the new tool like this, because the feelings you have as a DBT user may not one-for-one translate over to SQLMesh, in the sense that I think there's a little bit more going on with SQLMesh. But anyway, let's wrap up, and I'll share my final thoughts. First of all, please follow me /Database Tycoon on LinkedIn. As I mentioned, this is a real project that I'm doing, and it's sort of on the early stages at this point. So as I get more comfortable with all these tools and use them more, and the team uses them, we'll keep posting our findings. Like I said earlier, I could envision this being a fully cloud-hosted stack at some point, even though they're all open source tools. It feels like each team is strongly prioritizing how to make their own tool work very well and efficiently on their own cloud platforms. So I could imagine a point in a few months from now where we've got DLT plus, Tobico Cloud, and MotherDuck all operating together for, fractions of what another modern data stack of similar specs might cost. So there's that. In terms of maybe some action items for people watching, I would say that if you are interested in learning SQLMesh, there's really never been a better time to try to start learning it. The community is good and strong, and the Tobico brothers, the founders, they're friendly, and they always want to answer questions and kind of get involved in the future of the tool and stuff. So I think that there's still quite a lot of potential with this tool that's just waiting to be untapped. And then, in particular, try it with MotherDuck. Try it with MotherDuck, because that's just, as I mentioned, it's a good user experience, and it's kind of a good quick way to get started. If you, regardless of the tools you want to use, if you told me you just wanted to build a data stack for your business, or you had some kind of small data project you wanted to build, this right now is probably the fastest way I could recommend you getting started. I can't emphasize how quick and easy it is to just get MotherDuck running on the free tier. And then, SQLMesh, keep doing that. SQLMesh, sure, there's definitely a learning curve to it, but once you've got it connected to MotherDuck, things just work quite well. And yeah, this is a backup. Even if you don't want to sign up for MotherDuck, you can just use DuckDB, which is the, of course, open source engine behind MotherDuck. And getting started with SQLMesh and DuckDB, all completely local, is a great way to go. So you've got a lot of options here. All right, thank you. This is my last slide. I have to do my pitch for my business now. So, Database Tycoon is a consultancy where we're solving real data problems without the hype. I think this presentation showed that point, where I'm really just focused on getting a good quality of life for users out of these tools, and making sure that they can handle the real scenarios that come up often. So this demo highlighted that. Our open source approach here means that you get flexible, scalable solutions that will grow with you. And we will actually partner with your team. We'll turn your data challenges into opportunities, transform your infrastructure from a headache into your competitive edge, which is just a way of saying basically, if you're at any stage in the data stack journey, there's probably always something you can either add to it or change about it. And my team here would really love to chat about that if that's something you're interested in developing. So I'll leave it there and stop sharing my screen, and I'll open it up to questions.
Yeah. So we have a few. I think I don't know if you've answered these already, but so Stefan asked, how do you work around the limits of DuckDB memory?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have a bit of a cop-out answer here, which is by using MotherDuck, I can kind of sidestep that memory issue because it's all running there in the cloud. If you're running DuckDB locally, then I don't really think there's any secret to it per se. I mean, either you have to start thinking about sharding data out to multiple queries, or just trade in that laptop and get some more RAM, I guess. I see, I'm kind of going through the questions too. I think there was one from, I see Elvis. One shift I've seen with respect to newer data platforms is that under the hood, they're all using open source tech, shifting towards VPC deployment, which is exciting. Yeah, that is exciting. I mean, this in some ways, this is a way of kind of trying to build that here. Like, what would it take to build that on your own? But sometimes it's nice to just be able to log into a UI and just have that done for you. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff happening with the open source tools. And then a question from Lucas. I haven't used SQLMesh before. Why did you choose it? Any particular advantage? I'll say that, you know, other than just to more or less have the excuse to try it, it was to explore some of these features like the environments, like the UI and its relationship with the CLI. I wanted to get a better sense for how it works. And, you know, now that I've gone through this project, I think the features that the environments bring and the ability to sort of quickly iterate on warehouse infrastructure without having to be a data engineer, that feels like a standout feature. I'll continue to try to find things that make it stand out, but I suppose it's probably worth mentioning that, you know, 90% of the functionality is nearly identical to many of the other tools out there. They're all trying to, you know, solve a similar problem. Did I consider and compare ClickHouse for a relational database? No, actually, I did not for this, although they've been on my radar, and I could potentially use them in a future project. I'll keep that in mind. And then, yeah, I guess this was going live. DuckDB UI in the CLI opens up the same notebook that Stephen showed, but locally run. That's true. I didn't actually show it in the demo, but that's how I got to that. What about data governance and crawler for data catalog and data discovery? What would you recommend? Yeah, that's a great question. Maybe a topic for another demo, perhaps. But no, we're right now at Database Tycoon looking at options that are both open source and, I suppose, closed source, for lack of a better word. You know, there is an open metadata tool that could fit in nicely here and kind of continue the open theme. But truth is, I don't really have a great answer for this stack yet. So let me get back to you on that. All right, I'm seeing. Yeah, definitely want to try out ClickHouse. Set up a separate tool like Estuary. Yeah, so I mean, another thing that's great, obviously, about the modern data stack is you can modularize almost all of it. So if you want to, you know, I kind of added on MotherDuck later, but I started with DuckDB locally, and you can swap in different loaders, you can swap in different BI tools, whatever. You get all that flexibility when you set up the tools yourself, frankly. So So it's interesting to see them all working in a stack together.
But then he asked, can you set up a separate tool like Estuary to CDC data into another DuckDB?
Right. Yeah, you can set up stuff like that, and that's if you're using ClickHouse too. I assume. Starlake AI. Okay, cool. Oh, fully open source. All right, nice. Good combos going on in the chat. Well, that's all I had for the demo. So I guess, Chloe, we can start wrapping it up if there's no other questions.
Great. Cool. Well, as always, we'll have the recording up on YouTube in a week or two. And for those of you, unfortunately, for those of you who just joined today, since there's only one left, you cannot get the certificate. But for those of you who it's your second session, if you attend next week, you'll get the certificate. And thank you so much, Stephen. I am so proud of you. This was an amazing session. Thank you guys so much for attending, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you all.